Hello YouTube Pipers, Double O Pipe here, aka Rick. I got some blood red moon that I'm going to put into my London coronation pipe and try to light it and keep it lit. Of course, now this stuff is mighty moist, so I don't know how it's going to go. Anyway, I noticed this morning that I have over 260 subscribers. Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it? I want to thank every one of you because I never expected anything like that. But it makes me kind of proud that there are that many people that want to watch what I do. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. I'd have some kind of a giveaway, but I don't know what to give away. I have a hat, but you'd have to have a certain size head for that hat. It's that Panama hat that I showed on one of my posts, that the brim is just too wide for me. I just don't feel comfortable under that. It's a little bit too much. But I don't think anybody wants that hat, and whoever would get it would probably find out it was the wrong size, like I did. I mean, I've got things in the inner band to make it smaller so it fits. But still, I don't like the brim. I guess I've got some tobacco I could put in a package and send out, but I don't have a clue how to go about what these other folks have done, because I haven't really paid attention to how they decide to give it. I wouldn't know what to ask for a VR. Maybe I'll take another look at one of those and see. Because like I say, I've got a couple of tobaccos that somebody might like, to show my appreciation for subscribing. If anybody wants to give me an idea of what to do, I'd be quite happy to have that down in the comments. Yeah, 260 folks. Wow. I'm going back to 1950. Back when I lived next door to my cousins. And we would go to Folly Beach. It's a local beach. It's always been known for its... It was like a hippie place before hippies were even popular. Back in 1950, it was a local community where the people who lived there. They didn't come in during the summer and stay for a while. They lived there. That was their home, that island. And their community was very close. Everybody knew everybody. And that was always the beach we went to. Always. I think this time was the first time we went. We had a 1950 Ford. That was the chartreuse one. And my mother would get together with her sister, who lived next door, and commenced to making sandwiches. My aunt would mix peanut butter and jelly in a jar and mix it together so that it formed this ugly looking gray paste. And then she'd spread that on 2 slices of white bread and get some wax paper, and they would fold the wax paper over it so that it was like a little square of wax paper, and then put that in the basket we would carry. My mother made pineapple sandwiches. It's not just slices of pineapple. It was the crushed pineapple that you get out of a can with all that juice. And she'd mix that with mayonnaise. And it might not sound good, but oh, were they good. And she would make a bunch of those and wrap them up in wax paper, because that's what we had. We didn't have these plastic baggies of today. We had wax paper, and that would keep it fresh until we got to it. And she would put those in the basket. And there'd be not cottage cheese, but goodness, I can't think of pimento cheese sandwiches. And I know there was another kind, but anyway, all these sandwiches would be all put in a basket. We'd have a cooler with ice in it, and we'd have Coca-Colas and orange crush and grape sodas. All that be put in there. All of this would be put in the trunk. And we'd get ready to go. Me, my cousin that I talked about before, who was in a wheelchair, we'd get him ready and get his wheelchair. And then my cousins, other 2 cousins, 2 girls, will get ready. We'd have towels and blankets to put on the sand. And we'd all hop in the car. And early in the morning, we'd take off and head toward the beach. Down a 2-lane blacktop, headed for Folly Beach. And along the way, there would be areas where there was tide coming into a marsh area, where some places would have like a hole, be a swimming hole for the black kids when we'd ride along. There'd be creosote posts that'd be sticking out on the side of the road. And as we rode by, we would see a black boy jump up into the air, and that's all we saw, because we were gone by the time he hit the water. But that always stood out in my memory, because they always looked like they were having fun. And it takes about 15 minutes, I guess, to get to Folly Beach. And we drive down the road facing the ocean and pull in on the sand. You could park on the sand on the beach itself. And by the time the water came lapping up onto the tires, it was time to leave. So it was a good ways out whenever we got there. We got the blankets and put them out on there, put books and things to weight them down so the wind wouldn't blow them off. Excuse me. And the baskets and the ice containers would stay in the trunk until we were ready to eat. till it was lunchtime. And after we'd get the big umbrella stuck in the sand, or after my aunt and my mother would get it stuck in the sand, we were too little to do that. And the blankets were settled, and they were settled in the shade. We kids would take off down for the edge of the water. And our parents would always say, be careful, don't go in too far. And we'd always say, of course, we won't do that. Yeah. We never said anything. We just rushed down there screaming, yay! We would go dip our toes in the rippling surf coming in, look for shells, and push my cousin around in his chair. And then we'd go, when the tide was really out, there would be strips where it had left enough water. It was almost like a pond. It was maybe about that deep. There might be some minnows trapped in it until the tide came back in. And on the edge of those puddles, we would break out the pails and put sand in it and build sand castles around that water. Go wading through it, try to catch minnows. We never went out into the water itself because I don't know that my mother didn't swim, but I don't know if Marguerite, my aunt's mom, was able to swim or not. But anyway, we never went out in the water because we were concerned that nobody could save us if anything happened. So we mainly stayed in the wet sand, building castles and wading through those leftover lakes in the gullies. And about noon, because my cousin could look up at the sky and say, it's noon, and I'd always say, how do you know it's noon? She says, because the sun's right above us. It's always right above us when it's noon. I was only 5. So she'd say, we probably should go back and get some lunch. So we'd all run back, push the chair back up there. If we had been in the water at all, we would towel off a little bit. Get situated under the umbrella if there was enough room. And then my mother would bring out the basket and my aunt would bring out the cooler. And she'd open the basket and say, who wants what? And I would yell, I want a pineapple sandwich. And my cousin would say he wanted a peanut butter and jelly. And my 2 girl cousins would say what they wanted. Now when you unwrap these sandwiches in this wax paper with a pineapple sandwich, you had to lift it and eat it fast because that pineapple was crushed pineapple, which meant it was very liquid. It only had a little bit of mayonnaise in it, and you had to lift it and eat it fast before it fell through, because it would get that bread just as wet and soggy so that it would if you didn't eat it fast. And it had been sitting in that wax paper for a while. And everybody would finish up there. Everybody would finish up their sandwiches, and then the rule was you can't go in the water for an hour after you eat. So being out in the sun and the surf and the wind, we were probably tired anyway, so some of us took a nap, some of us read. And when the hour was up, we'd run back out to the water again. And we'd look for shells. We'd walk in the surf as it was coming in, because it was closer now than what it was, of course. And whatever shells we found, we would throw in our buckets that we had been making sand castles with. And the water was beginning to come up to where the blankets were, so the grown-ups picked up the blankets and put them in there and put in the trunk, and got the basket and the cold drinks and put those in the trunk. Now, I think I always got a grape soda, and it was always a thrill to me because I had only been introduced to soft drinks that year, and it was a Coca-Cola when I was riding in a car with my cousins. And they told me to have a sip because I said I'd never had that before. And the experience was like magic when I first did it. I still remember it. It tickled and burned at the same time as it was going across my tongue, and I had never tasted anything like it. Being from England, we never had anything like that. I'm sure they did over there, but we never had it. So anyway, I always liked the grape sodas, and I still got that tickly tingling sensation whenever I drank it. It kind of made me giggle when I drank it. So after the grown-ups got the car packed, they would yell at us to come on in, so we'd we'd hurry up to the car. Tide coming in. Get the car packed, to get everybody in the back seat, in the front seat. And I don't know who was driving. It was probably my mother. She would back up and drive us off the sand of the beach and back up onto the road. And always, always, when we went to Folly Beach, on the way back in the afternoon, we would stop at the vegetable stands. The black folks on the island would always have stands on the side of the road in the summer to sell the vegetables that they had grown in their garden. And my mother and my aunt would always go up there and pick out the best okra, the best corn, the best beans, and I'm sure there were other things. Squash. I know my mother always got squash. And pay for all their stuff, get their bags together and go back to the car and head off again back to the house. We'd get to the house, we'd all get cleaned up, have a bath, get all that sand and everything off of us. And then we'd go over to my aunt's house and sit on the porch. I don't know if you've ever shucked bean. I don't know if you call it shucking. I'm not sure now. I know that's oysters. But you open the pods of the beans and you push them out with your thumb into a bucket. We'd all sit there and do that with the beans that had been bought. And my aunt would put all this into a pot and cook okra stew over the night. Throw all the vegetables into the pot, some water, some ham hock, cover it up and let it boil until the next day. well, simmer. Then the next day we would go over there and we'd have okra soup and talk about all the fun we had had at the beach the day before. I don't know when they stopped people driving and parking on the beach, but they did. That was one of the funs of it. You could get behind the car when the sun was at an angle and sit in that shade. Excuse me. But those days at the beach, they were always fun. And I always remember the pineapple sandwiches, because like I said, you had to eat those things fast because they were soggy in your hand. But they were so good. Boy, my mother made a lot of them. Well, that's my memory of Folly Beach when I was 5 years old. We could park on the beach and we would just have a good time. We didn't have to go out and jump in the waves or anything. We had a good time right there at the edge where we called them lakes, but it was the water that was left in the dips in the sand as the water went out, and it was always captured a game and the water came in. Those little minnows that were in that still area of water lived until the tide came back and pulled them out. And we would marvel over the seashells that we had found, conch shells and sand dollars and all those good things. Good memories. Fun memories. That was a long time ago. So much for that. If anybody has an idea of how to celebrate, because I'm just dense and I don't really pay much attention. But if you can tell me how I can celebrate and how I can send somebody a tin of tobacco, I'd be happy to do that for reaching the 250 and more level of subscribers. And I'd be happy to do it. All right, folks, that's me yabbering on enough. I say I hope you're doing well. I hope your weekend is going to be a good one. God bless you until the next time.